and then I can introduce you, and then I know you have some things to say and to share with our students.
Okay.
Congressman Pascrell, thank you very much. My name is Lawrence C. Pinto. I'm the principal at Cliffside Park High School, and it's really a privilege to have you here again. You were here a few years ago, so we really appreciate you coming and speaking to our students and giving them this opportunity. I'd like to just recognize Mr. Adler and Mr. Janucci, who put in a lot of time and energy to set this program up for the students. Right. They coordinated this event, so I just want them to be recognized. And I believe we're being joined by our mayor, members, potentially some members of his staff and his council. So Mayor Calabrese, if you are here, thank you for joining us also.
Thank you.
And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Adler.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Pinto. Good morning, students. Good morning, Congressman, and welcome today to our special event. First off, I also want to say a quick thank you to everyone who worked on making this happen, including particularly Ian Godfrey in the Congressman's office, and Mr. Pinto and Mr. Jusha. He is. Well, he is my favorite because I met him over the summer, and there is no
favorite chair.
There is no fiercer supporter of the students of Cliffside Park than Mr. Godfrey. And I have the honor today of introducing both our visitors. Among the many wonderful facts about our illustrious guest, I'd like to highlight, I think my favorite, and I learned this from Wikipedia, is that Mr. Pascrell was once a professor of psychology. And with that in mind, and with his blessing, I'd like to briefly share my favorite psychological experiment. It goes like this. You take a dog and you put him in a room with a small fence in the middle. Ring a bell and soon after, shock the dog through the floor. Fairly quickly, the dog will learn to jump over to the other side. That's classical conditioning, and it's not at all that interesting. What is interesting is what happens if you hurt the dog, no matter what he does and no matter what side of the fence he comes to rest on. Eventually, given enough pain he can't control, the dog will just lie down. Soon enough, the dog will give up as the world conspires to hurt him no matter what he does. Psychologists call this learned helplessness. You don't have to be a psychologist to see learned helplessness. Take a look out of your window at the streets of America. Doesn't matter the window, doesn't matter the street. Over the last 8 months of plague and economic and social unrest, the world has shocked us and hurt us, and none of it seems to be in our control. Everywhere you look, you find people exhibiting learned helplessness, but not at Cliffside Park. I want to be very clear about this part, so listen up. Because of the power of your vulnerability in the class of COVID-19, you made the world take notice. Because of the strength of your resilience through hardship, you wrested control of the uncontrollable. And because of your shared refusal to give up, today, you got a member of Congress, the greatest and most powerful institution in American history, to come and pay his respects to you. Imagine with that spirit what you'll accomplish tomorrow. And now it is my deep honor to introduce you to the representative from the 9th Congressional District, a tireless advocate for the rights of all citizens, a staunch defender of neurological health and student athletes, and I'm led to believe a former professor in psychology. Please, Congressman Bill Pascrell, my honor, sir.
My honor, Sean. I'm honored to be with you and the students, and the folks that have joined us today in the administration, the principal, superintendent. This is fantastic. And once a teacher, always a teacher. I was a teacher for 12 years and left it to get into this crazy business. And I know the students of Cliffside Park. First of all, you got a great system. And I never met a bunch of teachers, administrators who really care about the kids that they deal with day in and day out. And that's the main thing. Having been a teacher myself, I have a book in my hand, which I've read. You gave it to me. Thanks to you, Sean. This was a book by the students of Cliffside Park concerning the COVID-19. And, I read through it and I made so many notes in this book. It's beginning to look like a different book, but it's the same book. And I've read the first letter or message in this book is by Adriana Castillo. I understand she graduated.
She's graduated. Many of the students have graduated. We tried very hard to get them back, but they're all across the country in college. And
right. Well, she wrote in this that, and I guess she wrote this back in April or May.
Yes, sir.
She said, For the past month, I've been in quarantine and been confined to my house. And I talked about that many times, and I talked to different groups about what we're going through right now. Because we've experienced in this quarantine, we experienced some psychological questions about who we are. I found that to be very cogent. This is the real stuff. And the more you're isolated, the more you may find yourself saying things, doing things that you said you had never done before. That's a natural thing. Don't be down on yourself because of that. And you feel alone, find somebody to talk to. Don't hide underneath your bed in your bedroom. The point of the matter is that you have so much to offer. I read through this book twice, and with all my notes in it as well. And some students wrote notes to me in the back of the book. And, there's so much in life to be proud of and happy of. So you feel alone. I went through a serious operation in July. And I felt the same, like double the isolation. I was, in a sense, quarantined. I just started to drive my car again this week. And I understand that feeling. And it's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you when you have that feeling. The thing is, you got to get out of it and do something. And the fact that we're here a few days away from an election, that might not be a bad idea for a starter. But many times people want to talk about very, very personal things. And when you're quarantined in your house, or the situation is different, young people flooded the streets after the inauguration for the Women's March. I joined hands in support of immigrants from the Muslim ban that was upon us. Think about that. A Muslim ban for this country. What if you were Muslim? There are a lot of Muslims in this country. They come from all over the world. If we're going to have equality of religion, or if it's just a bumper sticker, they're two different things. You marched for your lives in the wake of a deadly school shooting up in Connecticut, if you remember. And recently, in support of Black lives after the brutal murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. So I had the pleasure of serving in the Congress with a good man for over 20 years. Ironically, he was the chairman of the committee I was just elected to, the Oversight Committee in Ways and Means, which handles everything from taxes to trade and everything else. 20 years. He was 16 years chairman of that committee, subcommittee. He passed away a little while ago. He taught me that growing as people require increasing self-reflection, that becoming a better American demands constant regeneration, that it can only be achieved with some good trouble. In fact, he wrote a book, Good Trouble. He wrote a book, get involved, get in the way. That is a nonviolent person. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about peaceful engagement. It's only possible if we work, if we have passion, then we get good trouble. I look forward to the questions that we're going to go into, and I've seen some of them ahead of time. And if you have any other questions or want to ask me anything, that's what I'm here for. So I've been in the Congress for 24 years. Some people would say it's time for you to get out. I don't think of retirement. I'm off the streets of Paterson, New Jersey. I live here all my life. So I've caused some trouble myself. And hopefully I've been a help to the country, and I hope I've made it better. And I'm still here and still fighting very strongly since I was a teacher for the kids all over America. to try to make it better for them, to provide more interesting programs so that teachers have the resources to do their job day in and day out, and to provide services that we need that we didn't have 10, 20 years ago. I love teaching. I can't wait to get back when colleges ask me to come and speak to them, or high schools. I can't wait to get back in that position, because my family always reminds me, you're still the teacher. They always say I'm teaching them, you know. They don't like to be taught at this time. But the point is, when you teaching, when you love the people that you're talking to, and you're doing the best, you're trying to do the best for them, then you try to bring out the best in them. And most of us don't know the talents that we really do have. We've never explored it. And you got to be creative. You got to be creative. You can't let other people just be creative. There's a little creativity in everybody. And I think that's very, very important. So, Sean, you want to get into some questions?
Sure. I'm absolutely happy to do that. Let's, I'm sorry, look, it sounded like someone else's mic was on. Let's start with a question from Ms. Rowan's Humanities Academy. Helen, do you have a question for the Congressman?
Yes, I do. I actually have two questions. So one of them is, how has past experiences shaped the platform you stand for? And another one is, amidst social and political, fervent social and political division, how do you ensure that all voices are being heard?
I love that question. Let's take the second one first, Congressman. How do you ensure all voices are heard?
Well, I think that's probably one of the most important things, because we think we know all the answers, you know, at times. You gotta listen to the other person, as cockeyed as the other person may be, because you may be cockeyed too. The point of the matter is, we can't get enough of other people, listening to other people. This is how we learn. And even though we think we're set in a pattern of thought, conservative, liberal, you know, what are those words? What are labels? Don't deal in labels. You got to talk with people. And I think that's very critical, because many people are afraid to talk to other people. Maybe, you know, some people only want to talk to people who think like them. Well, you know, that you can't solve or resolve problems if you want the other person to think exactly like you. First of all, in the Congress, that's not going to happen. So, go ahead.
No, you're fine, Congressman. Please, someone just accidentally unmuted themselves. Please continue.
I like unmuted.
Well, we can all unmute at the end and wish you a wonderful weekend. How about that?
How about that? Is right. Now I can have a busy weekend.
Oh, now he muted himself.
Calabrese. Clinton, how are you?
Hey, good morning, Congressman. That was me. I'm watching my nephew. He's 1 year old, and I'm not good with babies, so I'm just trying to do my best here. Yeah.
God bless the whole family.
Thanks.
I was mayor of Paterson, New Jersey, and that was no day at the beach. I was mayor for almost 8 years. In the 8th year, I ran for Congress. You know, being a mayor means more than just filling potholes and getting cats out of trees. You got to put some thought into what you're doing, because the city's depending upon you, and therefore you engage. Do you engage just with people who think exactly like you? No. Well, I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about, if I may.
Of course, it's your show.
Helen, right? Okay.
Yes.
I'm elected mayor, and I ran, one of the things I ran on, I ran for mayor of Paterson, New Jersey in 1990. I was state legislator at the time. I became a double dipper when I became the mayor. At that time, you were allowed to do that. It helped me a lot in trying to bring services to the citizens of my city. And I've lived in Paterson all my life. I'm off the streets. If anybody can, if I did it, anybody can do it. And we had a big victory in that election. I wasn't expected to win. I got more votes than everybody put together. I thought it was like a dream. And in many ways, we're talking about dreams here, my friends. That's what we're talking about. And you want those dreams to come true. And they may seem so outlandish, but that's no excuse. But you got to follow through and do the best you can. So I'm mayor for about 3 or 4 months. I'm sitting in the mayor's office, and I said, geez, I'd like a nice cup of coffee. Let me walk. And the secretary wanted to go out and get it. No, I want to walk. I walked down on Broadway. City Hall's on Market Street. I went to Broadway, and I went into a little diner. And at the end of the counter at the diner, was a guy I knew from the 2nd Ward of Patterson. He was white. He was about 38 years old. He was a contractor. He did jobs, small job, not a big contract, but a small contract. And I've known him for many years. And I know that he voted for me. He had a sign on his lawn, signs don't vote, but I think he voted for me. And he asked, when I'm leaving the diner, I go over to say hello. And he says to me, Mayor, I voted for you. My family voted for you. But don't forget us. Now, you have to know, Patterson, you have to know its racial background, its ethnic background. I understood exactly what he was saying. Because during the election, one of my priorities was to clean up all the parks and make them look like new. I think that's important in any town, any county. You got some beautiful parks in the towns in Berger County, and the county does a terrific job in the parks as well. Our Assemblyman Clinton Calabrese has done a good job in making the state greener, because that's not a minor issue. It's a big issue with him. Here's what he meant. Well, I'm telling you what he's thinking as he's talking to me, all right? Of course, I can't get to his head, but you understand what I'm saying. He's saying, well, you promised to fix all the parks and clean all the parks, and you already started on the job. You're doing a good job, Bill Pascrell, but don't forget about us. Well, what about that part? Because what we did is started on the worst parks that we thought. So therefore, if the parks were half decent in your section of the city, there was nobody there yet. They didn't get to you yet. And he was looking at this when he said, don't forget about us. He had separated in his mind white and black. A lot of people think that way. They don't mean any harm. They don't mean anything negative. They're not like stupid bigots. The point is that that's how he saw life. And in politics, that's very important, to understand the other person and to listen to the other person. He was absolutely right. I was wrong. I wanted to get to the parks that were the worst, but it sends an impression to people. And in these huge racial situations that we have, we need to understand that people are watching. People pick this up. They're forgetting about me. In other words, they're forgetting about the white sections of town. And Patterson has no quote unquote white section now. It's fully integrated. Has a lot of problems, but there's a lot of people there who want it to be better. And that's our hope. So you don't give up. You don't throw in the towel, and you do the best to make it better. And I know that you will, Pelham. I know that.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was a wonderful answer. I think we're going to move on to some other questions. I have a question from Carla. Actually, Carla, you have 3 questions. Why don't we pick one that you'd like to ask the Congressman? And Congressman, by the way, Carla has signed up to be in the sequel to the Class of COVID-19. We're writing another book. We're sharing more stories. We're going to have more voices to follow up on your answer about how important it is to share our stories and share our voices and not have division. We are going to be doing another one, and Carla's going to be part of it.
Well,
So, Carla,
maybe I'll try to write something and earn getting into this book.
Congressman, I would be honored to include your story in our book. Is that official?
I'm serious.
I'm serious too. You're in our book.
Don't ask people to do what you won't do.
I'm putting you in. You're done. It's in. Ian, we're talking later.
Okay, go ahead. What's the question?
Carla, you're up.
My question is, what are your plans to combat climate change, and why is it important that we're all doing our part to end it?
Thank you.
Well, I've signed on to the Green Bill, and I think it goes a little bit too far, but conceptually, I think it's a great idea. We should have started this, Carl, a long time ago and be very earnest about it. We see the results of climate change. We see the results of people not caring. So it's not just carbon monoxide. It's how you treat the earth. And whether you understand that if we don't, it's going to affect the food that we're able to eat. It's going to affect our health. My heart goes out to those people who have asthma. I mean, if they can't breathe because of the air that we're polluting, then, we're almost saying, well, we're participating in your death. Who the hell would be proud of that? You're a sick person if you like to cause other people to get sick or other people to die. So, I think that's very, very important. And I would, as one congressman, as a card carrying Democrat, I absolutely would undo much of what this president has done to do away with some of the regulations. Now, we don't want to over-regulate. We don't want necessarily to put people out of work. Take the coal industry. The coal industry's lost because they've had to, the owners of the coal mines down in West Virginia and Kentucky, they had to adhere to new federal laws. Like the car manufacturers in the United States of America. We set a standard that by such and such a time, those cars have to give us X amount of miles, and we'd cut down on car pollution. And when we develop alternate energies, that's what's happening. Who thought that the electric car was going to be out and popular like this? It's getting bigger. Joe Biden has talked about putting a lot of money into these stations along our highways so that we would move to electric. And I have a hybrid car. It gets good mileage, and I know I'm helping the environment. How about if I had a totally electric car, and we don't need gasoline, we don't need fossil fuel, and I realize that ain't going to happen tomorrow morning. It's not going to happen Saturday morning. It's going to take time. So don't try to change the world in one whiff of your wiffle ball bat. Take it easy. Go one step at a time. That's when change really counts. Carla, that was a great question.
Fantastic. I want to throw it
Thank
over
you.
to Mr. Venezia's class, Mr. Venezia's AP history class, and Atta. Atta has a few questions. Atta, if you could choose one that you would like to ask the congressman.
What nationality is that, Atta?
I'm Turkish.
Turkish. Very good. Very good.
Okay.
We have a lot of
So,
people living in Patterson.
yeah.
South Patterson. A lot of good Turkish restaurants.
Yeah. Pretty familiar with them.
I'm not too happy with the Turkish government now, though, Atta. I got to tell you.
Yeah. Same here. Not at all.
All right, what's your question?
Okay. Okay. So here's my question. What do you think about mail-in voting? Do you think it's a reliable way to vote for this upcoming election?
I think it's the greatest thing since Swiss cheese. Look, no one's got an excuse. I don't want to hear they're all the same. It doesn't matter who gets elected. Tell me it doesn't matter. We could have done so much more for education. We could have done so much more for the environment. We could have done so much for human rights. Every immigrant group went through problems when they got here. The Italians, I'm 100% Italian. when they came in at the beginning of the 20th century, they were facing the same discrimination as everybody else. So the new immigrants are nothing special. They're getting the same garbage as the other immigrants. And, why should we be different anyway? But the point that I'm trying to make is, if you don't do anything about those things, they develop into real trouble. Real trouble. So your question is specifically what, Anta? What are you after?
Well, I'm just trying to figure out if you think that mail-in voting would be a reliable source for voting for this upcoming election in particular.
Mail voting makes it easier, and I think what we want to do is make it as easy as possible for everybody, whether it's dealing with the number of boxes that are out there, because each county runs its own elections, really, and where people can find these much easier than mailing. They feel maybe more confident. There is no evidence, except for minor things that can be corrected, that mail voting is any less precarious or dangerous than if we go there on election day, which you can, and vote in person. Say, oh, I'm not going to send the mail. I got to vote in person. I want to know my mail. Well, there's screw ups when you have mail. The machines too, And so we need to police these things. We don't want anybody voting illegally. We've had plenty of time to register. Registration is now over in most states. I think it's over for every state now. Mm-hmm. And mail voting has started in every state now, even though that started at different times. So I think it's the best way to vote. I've never voted. I vote mail when I'm in Washington, of course, and there's an election going on. So I'll mail my vote, or I'll bring it over to the county building myself. But most part, mailing, I believe, is the safest way. And as long as the county protects that vote, I think that's the best way. Thank you, Ada.
Thank you, Congressman.
Welcome.
I want to stay with Mr. Venezia's AP class. Is Carly out there? Carly, you have a question for the Congressman.
Where's Carly? I don't see her.
I don't see her either. I think she's in the class. I hope she's in the class. If not, I like the question. I'm going to ask it for her.
Go ahead.
All right, Congressman, I'm going to ask it for her because I like this. She says, I'm turning 17 this weekend. As a 17-year-old, what can I do to help change politics in America?
Well, I think we want to learn as much as possible before we do anything. But we can learn on the job, and we can learn when we're doing this, doing whatever we're going to do. I started out as a county committee person when I was 18. At that time, we had just changed the voting laws. Mm-hmm. I vote. And I learned so much. I believe in boots on the ground and keep it the least esoteric that you can so people understand what the hell you're talking about. Because people need to know. And you don't learn everything out of a book. You don't learn everything in a classroom. You learn it in real life experiences. And so I started in the lesser job as a county committeeman, which means that in my district, I tried to help people in that district to represent my party, but to, more importantly, help the individuals so that you don't lose sight of it when you, let's say, move up the ladder. You don't lose sight that the people, the reason why you're there. And so what you think is the bigger problems may not be. They may be involved in the smaller problems. Give you an example. I ran for mayor of Patterson in 1990. And I ran against 4 other people. And one of the first campaign stops I made was in a public housing development. And it was, I'd say, 80% African-American, 20% Hispanic. And I don't call them projects because to me, that's And that's the meaning. Because, you know, there's a history here of demeaning people who live in public housing. And you want to know something? Many great Americans came out of public housing.
Mm-hmm.
Some governors, some mayors. So that's ridiculous. But I went to this town meeting. There's about 25 people there. I was the only white person in the I was invited. I'm one of the candidates. The African American that was in the race would not go to each of these projects, housing developments, as we call them. And I walked in, there's a guy has his chair up against the back wall. That's where he was. And he was going back and forth in a chair. And I said to myself, that guy is going to be trouble, or he's going to ask a question that no one else is even thinking about. So he's in there, he's swaying in a chair like he's there yelling out to me, which he's not. I'm from Missouri. Show me. What do you got? Throw me your best pitch. So I go up and I speak a little bit, and I had concentrated 3 nights before that on what the rules were. How do you get into? How are you eligible to be in a housing development, public housing? You know, what the income has to be, et cetera, et cetera. What are the other conditions? I mean, you know, you can't get a housing apartment. You can't get a public housing apartment and bring in your family that lives in Idaho that you hadn't seen in 25 years. So I finished talking. He raised the first guy to raise his hand. And by the way, he kept on swinging in the chair. I thought he was going to hit his head on the wall. And then he asked me this question. You say you're going to help us if you're elected mayor. We elect you as mayor? And I said, yes. I said, well, what are you going to do about the 3 wash machines that aren't working in the utility room? When he was finished asking me the question, I said to myself, you are the filthiest person in the world, Pascrell. You weren't prepared for that question. You're thinking he's going to ask you about Section 22 in the housing laws and rules about how someone is eligible for public housing or something like that. He wants you to tell the housing authority to get these washing machines fixed. I looked at him. I paused for 10 seconds. Do I make a fool out of myself, or do I give him an honest answer? Well, it's good to be honest. And I said, I'm elected mayor. Within 2 weeks, those washing machines will be fixed. Now, that's making a big commitment. You know, like, they're all looking at each other. Who cares about that? This is the mayor's race. No, this is important to that person. So what you think is important may not be important to the other person. So keep up the good work. You can help. You can help people in your community. You can help a politician who you may like. You say, hey, that girl thinks like me. I'm going to try to help her. And that's how you get started in life anyway, whether you're an engineer or a politician. Next question.
Next question. We have a freshman, Chris Catalan.
All
Chris,
right.
are you there?
Yes, I am here. Hello, Congressman.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm very good today. I got out off the right side of the bed. Okay.
Chris, I know you wrote a couple questions. Why don't we pick one?
Sure. A question that I would like to ask is, this one is, due to the current racial tension in the country, what do you plan to do within your district and the state to treat minorities with respect and prevent police brutality?
Well, I could tell. I start by saying the least important thing. I voted for reform within the police departments. Many police officers, because I am get this, I'm the chairman of the public, of the first responders, police officers. I'm the chairman. I've been the chairman for like 16 years. And I voted for reforms. And that was taken by some police officers and some police organizations as being anti-cop. I busted my back for 24 years. I've been in the Congress to get them all kinds of resources and support. Why? Because they need it and they deserve it to protect themselves and protect you and me. So I believe in police reform. We got to change it. Those killings were not just happenings. Those killings pointed us in the right direction. And while my first response to Black Lives Matter was kind of like a neutral response, you know what? Be proud of who you are. Doesn't matter what you look like, how your mom or your guardian cooks your food, what language you speak. Who you are is your character. That's why I was just always a great admirer of John Lewis. Read about him. Read about him. He came in 1996 to campaign for me when I first ran for Congress. And I took him, we were in Passaic, New Jersey. That's also in Passaic County. And he told the story about how he grew up. He grew up on a chicken farm in Alabama. And the only way, it was in like a tornado corridor. There was a lot of bad weather. And you know how they protected their house? They got the huge family to be in a circle whenever there was a storm coming through, to stand and hold the house down almost on the ground. And he used to give sermons to the chickens on the farm as a kid. I mean, read about him. Read about him. And then he got bopped on the head when he came over to Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, because he was fighting for human rights, nonviolently. And if it wasn't for John Lewis, we'd be further away from racial harmony. Will we ever get to racial harmony? Probably not in our lifetime, but we'll be a lot closer to it. And that's what you got to keep in mind. We all got a part of this. The government cannot solve these problems. We have to look at who we are and want to solve it, not to make anybody better than anybody else, but to make us live in harmony. I think that's a good idea.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Congressman. Congressman, it is now 10:43. Our bells are going to ring in 2 minutes. So I want to throw it over to Mr. Pinto, our principal, and let us figure out what we're going to do from here, if we're going to end or if we're going to... Mr. Pinto?
Thank you, Mr. Adler. So, Congressman Pascrell, yesterday we had to hold the bells for this period, and we lost some time for the next period. So we are going to elect to move students to the next period so they don't lose further instruction from their third block. So I do want to thank you for your time. I want to thank Assemblyman Calabrese for joining us. I was kind of a late notification on my part to him, but I do appreciate you joining us, Assemblyman Calabrese. And once again, Mr. Adler, Mr. Janucci, all the students who participated and asked questions, we thank you very much. Congressman, really appreciate this opportunity, and we do thank you, and we are very appreciative. I do ask that you stick around, and maybe we can have a brief conversation when the students get dismissed very shortly.
Okay. I want to thank you, Principal Pinto. Your time is my time. I love this. You know, like I said, my family says, once a teacher, always a teacher. But I love dealing with the young people. I have so much hope in them, and I have so much faith in them that whatever you want me to do, I'll do. And I want to come back. I want to come back whenever we get back to, quote, whatever normal is. I want to come back and come to the school where I was a couple of years ago. I think you got a great school. I think you got a great town. And I'll tell you, the school system, it ain't perfect, but only God is perfect.
Have a
So
nice
whatever
day,
you
sir.
want to do, Ron,
All right. Everyone say thank you to the congressman. And then go to class.
Thank you. Have a